Every single day, people walk into gyms believing things that were never scientifically proven true. They repeat these ideas with total confidence, never questioning where these beliefs originally came from. The information travels from veteran lifters to beginners, hardening slowly into unquestioned fact across decades. High reps are for cutting. Concentration curls build your bicep peak. Never do cardio before lifting or you will lose gains. These ideas have shaped millions of training routines across decades without any real evidence behind them. Here is the brutal truth. A significant number of these widely believed training rules are simply completely and demonstrably wrong at their very core. The reason they survived this long is not because evidence supports them. Nobody credible ever seriously bothered to study them properly. That changed when one man sat at the intersection of bodybuilding culture and legitimate peer-reviewed academic research. Brad Schoenfeld was a competitive bodybuilder before he ever became a scientist. That detail matters more than most people realize when understanding his unique perspective. He was a personal trainer before becoming a professor. He did not study this world from outside. He lived inside gym culture, believed the bro science, and followed the myths before dismantling them. That origin story gives him a perspective almost no other exercise science researcher in the entire world actually possesses today. He was not studying muscle growth as a side effect of some sports performance study nobody asked for. He studied hypertrophy because he genuinely wanted to know whether what everyone around him was doing actually worked. He wanted the truth, not the folklore, not the locker room wisdom, not the confident advice of the biggest guy standing near the squat rack. To understand how bodybuilding mythology gets built, you have to understand how the sport itself actually evolved over many decades. Go back to the 1940s and 1950s. The training landscape looks almost completely unrecognizable compared to what you see inside gyms today. This was the era of Steve Reeves and John Grimmick, legends of the pre-steroid era of physical culture, strength, and genuine athletic dedication. The training philosophy of that generation was refreshingly straightforward. Total body routines 3 days a week, somewhere between 35 and 40 sets per workout. Simple, logical, and effective. Then the 1960s arrived and brought something that would change bodybuilding permanently and irreversibly. Steroids entered the picture, and everything shifted dramatically almost overnight. Split routines began taking over immediately. Training volumes climbed higher. Focus on individual muscle groups deepened significantly as the culture transformed around new chemical possibilities. Sergio Oliva stepped into the spotlight, then Arnold Schwarzenegger, then Frank Zane, each one pushing the boundaries of what a human body could visibly achieve. As decades rolled into the 1980s and 1990s, restraint dissolved completely. It was no longer just testosterone, insulin, growth hormone, thyroid hormones, stacked in doses previously unthinkable. The bodybuilders from the golden era are still alive today, living healthy lives well into old age. The generation from the extreme compound era tells a far more tragic and sobering story. Some are dying in their 20s, some in their 30s. The sport built around physical excellence became something entirely dark for its most extreme practitioners. Here is the problem the research world failed to adequately address. When a bodybuilder using significant compounds says a training technique works, what actually caused it? Is it the technique itself? Is it the compounds? Is it the powerful interaction between both working together inside an elevated anabolic environment simultaneously? The bodybuilder is not lying. The technique truly worked for them, but isolating exactly why inside a pharmacological cocktail is nearly impossible to determine cleanly. Now talk about what the average gym person actually needs to understand. The mythology does not live only at the extreme end of professional bodybuilding culture. It lives in every commercial gym worldwide, repeated confidently every single day by people who have never once looked at a peer-reviewed study in their entire lives. One of the most persistent myths is the deeply held belief that high reps are specifically designed for cutting body fat effectively. The logic goes like this: lighter weight burns more calories. More calories burned means more fat lost. More fat lost means a more defined and shredded physique. It sounds almost reasonable when said quickly to someone who just started training last month, but examine the chain of logic slowly, and the entire argument completely collapses. There is not a single peer-reviewed study showing high repetitions cause greater fat loss than heavier weight with lower reps. Not one study exists. The actual mechanism of fat loss is a sustained caloric deficit, nothing more, nothing less, and nothing else hiding in between those two simple words. When bodybuilders cut, they are glycogen depleted and running on very little available energy. Lighter loads feel manageable because their diminished energy levels cannot support heavy weights anymore. They get leaner because of the caloric deficit they are in, not because of the rep range they happen to choose during their exhausted training sessions. The bicep peak myth operates on the exact same faulty logic. Concentration curls sculpt a more dramatic bicep peak. People point to Arnold as living proof of this. Arnold did concentration curls. Arnold had legendary peaks. Therefore, the curls built the peaks. But this is the most basic false causation in all of fitness mythology. Arnold had a legendary bicep peak because of his genetics. Full stop. No exercise on Earth was responsible for that mountainous and iconic shape whatsoever. The shape of your bicep is entirely determined at birth. It is set by muscle length relative to tendon insertion point, and no curl variation ever changes that fact. Now the cardio debate. One of the most emotionally charged arguments across all of lifting culture, gym floors, and every online fitness community imaginable today. The traditional fear that doing cardio before lifting will destroy your gains is massively overstated for the vast majority of regular people training consistently. Walking 30 minutes before your session does not cause catastrophic hypertrophic impairment. What actually matters is the type, intensity, and duration of cardio performed before lifting. The chronic interference hypothesis, the old idea that aerobic and anaerobic training are simply metabolically incompatible, does not survive real scrutiny when applied to actual humans. For people earlier in their training journey, modest cardio may actually support muscle development rather than hinder it, through improved blood flow and accelerated recovery between sessions. Research tells you what works on average across study participants under controlled conditions. It cannot tell you what works best specifically for your genetics, your recovery, and your goals. The best athletes use research as a foundation and experiment honestly on top of it. They pay close attention to their own responses and adjust variables deliberately over time. Some bro science is mythology built on false causation, repeated until it hardened into unquestioned cultural fact. Some of it is actually ahead of the research curve entirely. The skill is developing judgment to tell the difference. That requires understanding mechanisms, not just memorizing popular training rules floating around confidently on social media.